Okay, students, today's lesson is on identification and the proper use of clamps that you'll need for welding. In your work, you're going to have to be able to position materials so that you can work with them and also free up your hands, because when you're welding, you want to be able to have two hands that you can use and not really have to depend on holding an object with one hand and then trying to weld with the other. And it might affect the quality of your work. So you want to learn how to use clamps. Probably the three most common clamps that welders like to utilize, I will show you. Your objectives today to be able to identify these three most common types of clamps, be able to show how to use them properly, and also how to take care of them properly. And it's pretty easy to do all three. You should be very successful after this presentation. I gave you a PowerPoint that you can review before you take the actual assessment, and then you can watch this demonstration. You'll probably learn everything you need to know just by watching. It's very simple, an easy task. Probably the most popular clamp that most welders will come in contact with and use on a daily basis, the adjustable C-clamp. These go by many different slang names. I've heard down south they like to call them hog jaws. Up north they call them 11Rs because the model number is 11R on them. You'll see some that will have swivel pads like this that apply the force over a greater area. You'll see some that have fixed jaws like this pair. Okay, all very simple to use. They all basically work the same. They have a screw. If you'll watch, you have a screw that as you turn it, it will either get bigger or smaller, okay? Depending upon the area that you need to clamp and how thick or thin the materials are that you're working with. These open up by simply flipping this little spring lever right here, and then they close by simply gripping them. Really, really easy to use. They have a little spring on the inside that keeps the jaw in line and keeps this part in line as well. You get a lot of leverage because this is basically a lever and this is your fulcrum that it rests on. You get a lot of leverage from these and you'll get a lot of gripping force and a lot of clamping pressure. I'll demonstrate the adjustable C-clamp for you. Here I have a block of wood that I wanted to put to this table. It's really simple. I open the jaws and I will just turn this knob until I feel like I've got to put a little bit of pressure, but not a lot of pressure, and that will hold it secure and firm. Okay. You don't want to put too much pressure on these clamps. It starts to distort the jaws, and if you have a soft surface like wood, it will scar it. So don't use any more pressure than what you have to. Okay. And again, with these swivel pads, this is basically the same clamp. It just has a pad that swivels, makes them a little bit easier to use, and it spreads the force over a wider area. So if you are working with softer materials, it doesn't tend to tear them up. They work in the same way. Again, if you turn it counterclockwise, it opens the jaws to make them wider. If you need them smaller, you turn it clockwise, or to the right, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and simply clamp them forward. Now I like to make them up in this configuration so that when I go to release these clamps, so that you don't bust your knuckles, you simply grab the knurled knob, you hit that flip lever, and they separate. If you do them in this manner, some people prefer this manner, I don't. I found that when I do it in this manner, that sometimes it hits the inside web of your thumb and it really hurts, okay? But be careful with them. If they have a lot of force on them, anticipate that they're going to spring open quickly so that you don't put your fingers in harm's way. Very, very common clamp that's used every day by welders. Often, I've heard several of my supervisors in the past say that 2 pairs of these clamps is the same as 1 man on a job, that he can buy 2 sets of these clamps. These clamps are about $17, $18 a pair for a good pair. They're worth 1 man on the job because it's basically like having another set of hands on the job. Okay? The most basic C-clamp is just simply in a C shape. It's got a screw, and it opens and closes, and it works much like the adjustables, but not as fast. Same thing, just put your work where you want it to rest, tighten up. Don't do like some people I've seen in the past and use a wrench to get more leverage. You'll end up distorting the body of the frame, and the clamp will be no good. It'll be in a condition that's typically called sprung. It's no good. Back the clamp off. The last clamp that I want to show you, and by the way, that is the C-clamp, and they do come in different sizes and shapes. This one almost looks like a D, and it's much larger, has a longer screw. You'll get a lot more leverage, a lot more clamping force out of it, and it has a deeper throat. This area is called the throat. This one is a smaller one, not as much pressure, but it will do the job for most jobs. The newest one on the scene, the Bessey Company. This is a sliding rail adjustable C-clamp. It actually runs on a rail, and it has a screw like the old style C-clamp. These clamps give you a lot of leverage, and they're very quick to use, and if you're good, you can do them with one hand. All right, you get a lot of leverage, a lot of twist. They're just as safe if you need to use them in this direction, and just as easy. Very convenient, very easy to use, very powerful. Sometimes though, their size makes them cumbersome, but there are also smaller and larger versions. Okay? The care of these clamps is very simple. Keep them clean. Don't overexert, and don't put too much pressure on them. Okay? Then that goes with any of them. If you start to notice that you're getting weld spatter on any of the screws, just use a wire brush, clean it off, and you'll be just fine. The main thing to keep in mind with the Bessey style, again, or the sliding rail, is to make sure that you keep the screw in the middle. That way you've got the most adjustment possible, and that you don't extend or underextend the screw. And that's all you need to know. You can refer to your PowerPoints, and I will be bringing you up one at a time as you master these. Some students will work with other students after they've mastered these skills. You'll need to demonstrate them. You have a rubric. If you want to score as a journeyman, you have to show that you can use and identify all three styles of clamps. Thank you, and we'll get started soon.